Golden Eagle TV, Golden Eagle Radio, bringing it all out, making sure you guys have quality programming, high consciousness, student activity. You know, every culture produces its own keeper, and every culture produces its own principles, its own history, its own advocates, and its own prophet, pointing the way to a higher quality of life. Now, for the urban street culture known in the world today as hip-hop, KRS-One is above all else. Yeah, KRS is an acronym for Knowledge Reigning Supreme. It's been called the Conscience of Hip-Hop by Rolling Stone, the greatest live MC ever by The Source, the spokesperson for hip-hop by the Wall Street Journal, and master teacher by the Zulu Nation. Now, with 20 published albums to his credit and his numerous appearances with other artists, KRS-One has literally written the most rhymes in hip-hop history. In the 90s, as the hip-hop genre grew, and it got more commercialized and corporate, it was KRS-One who openly rejected that more commercialized and corporate nature and the cultural exploitation, and grounded hip-hop in its original principles of peace, love, unity, and safely just having a good time. You know, teaching everything from self-creation, stopping violence, from vegetarianism to transcendental meditation, from the establishment of the Hip Hop Appreciation Week to establishing hip hop as an international culture at the United Nations. KRS-One has single-handedly held the history and original arts of hip hop together now for over 2 decades. Now, in addition to lecturing at over 500 universities in the US and publishing 3 groundbreaking books, KRS-One has established Stop the Violence movement, influenced the creation of West Coast All-Stars anti-gang anthem, We're All in the Same Gang, warned the hip-hop community against giving up their humanity for technological advancement, and has established the Temple of Hip-Hop for the spiritual exploration of hip-hop culture. Now, it's KRS-One who first argued that rap is something we do and hip-hop is something we live. He introduced I Am Hip-Hop philosophy, which Black Entertainment Television uses as the title of their Hip-Hop Lifetime Achievement Award to this day. And without question, KRS-One has been the loudest voice for the actual preservation and expansion of hip-hop worldwide, and is unquestionably the most influential hip-hop icon ever. Ladies and gentlemen, KRS-One.
Wow. Who was that you was talking about? I'd like to meet that guy. I thank you all. Please be seated. And whenever you record, you have the copyright of it. You just have the right. I just gave you the rights. You know what? This is okay. Well, this is fine. This is fine. This is actually working. You know, usually in a setting like this, I usually start off with like a brief synopsis or history on hip hop so that we know exactly what it is we're talking about. But in a lot of ways, I'm kind of thinking that you guys are already up on like the traditional information on hip hop. So for the sake of cameras and those that are recording, I'll just spend maybe 5 minutes on a brief history of what we're talking about. Now, what we're going to be talking about here today, I got your questions. Usually what I like to do is for you to walk out of here with a changed consciousness. And not just change, but it more enhanced. The object of this talk is for you to leave here with a broader view about not only culture, but ethnicity, race, activism, civilization versus technology. These areas are the areas we're going to discuss, and hip hop is at the center of all of that. I mean the center. People front like, you know, hip hop is peripheral or some subculture. No, hip hop is at the center of these themes that I just mentioned. What's going to help us, you guys have helped us, some of you have given me questions, and I usually ask for questions at the beginning so that I can speak, I could tailor make this conversation to the audience itself. I could go on for days with facts and stuff, but it's always best to answer questions that the audience itself is asking. Students themselves, teachers even, are asking, and then I could form the lecture around that. That is the structure of how we're going to get down. If your mind can take it, I will now begin. Hip hop, what is it? I can leave now. He said, I said hip hop. He said, what? I said, what is it? He said, life. There it is. End of the lecture right there. Hip hop is life. Let's start with culture. In the sense that when we say the word hip hop, capital H, lowercase I, lowercase p, space, capital H, lowercase o, lowercase p. Hip hop. We're talking about breaking, MCing, graffiti writing, DJing, beatboxing. Stop here. These elements, or actually I should say breaking, MCing, graffiti writing, DJing, are called the core 4 elements of hip hop. Established by Africa Bambaataa in 1974, and then again with James Brown in 1981. The reason we do breaking, MCing, graffiti art, and DJing is to cause peace, love, unity, and safely having fun. This is the reason for hip hop. It's the reason why we did it originally. We were growing up in the 70s in a time where our self-expression was being ignored by the mainstream. We weren't in television, we were nowhere in magazines, nowhere in media, nowhere in education, nowhere in even justice and things like medicine and like that. Like hip hop was like, what you see today, hip hop is everywhere. Imagine the complete opposite in 1973. Hip hop is nowhere. In fact, the name hip hop is like me saying to you today, gabaga. Gabaga. They say, what is that you're doing? Gabaga. And the same way you react is the same way the mainstream reacted to us. When we're spinning on our head, hitting up the trains. Oh, wait a minute, let me slow down. For those that aren't bilingual. We are spraying graffiti on the spray cans on the side of trains in New York City. They were parked in the train yard. We used to go to the train yard and put our names up on the side of the train. Then the next day you'd see your name go by on the side of trains. And this was like a cultural competition that we called aerosol art. Mainstream called it graffiti art. We never called it graffiti art, we called it graffiti writing, aerosol art, bombing, tagging, etc. Try to remember this. It'll come in handy later on. 1973, a Jamaican guy by the name of Clyde comes from Jamaica in 1967, actually, with his family. His father was a mechanic, his mother was a nurse from Jamaica. They had 2 children, brother, sister, Cindy and Clyde. On Cindy's birthday, Cindy asked Clyde to be her DJ. Clyde was a graffiti writer. And she asked him to DJ her party where they lived. They lived at a place called 1520 Sedgwick Avenue in the Bronx. There was a community center there. They rented it out. And because of Cindy asking her brother Clyde to DJ for her, he changed his name from writing Cool Ass Clyde to Cool Herc. He started calling himself Cool DJ Herc. Why Herc? Because Herc is short for Hercules. This dude was big and he had muscles, and her neighborhood was just called him Hercules. So his DJ name became Cool DJ Herc. What he would do is take James Brown's record specifically, and this other record called Apache by the Amazing Bongo Band. And he would just play the breaks of these records over and over and over again in this style that he called the merry-go-round. And the merry-go-round was a mixture of Jamaican style DJing. See, let me go back, make sure you got this. In Jamaica, there's a thing called sound systems. And these sound systems are DJs with their own sound system, speakers, amps, etc. They would come out in a big yard, even bigger than this, and they would set up their sound system and play reggae music. Now they would play the regular reggae of the day, but then if you flip the record over, there was something called a version. And the version was the instrumental of that record. They'd flip the record over and some other dude would come and start saying anything to the crowd to get the crowd riled up. The selector, which is what you call a DJ today, was called a selector. This person would be using the mixer to throw the music in. So if the music went boom, 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 if it went like that, he would take the mixer and go boom, 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 boom. He wouldn't let the music go boom, 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 boom. He wouldn't let it do that. Now, Kool Herc brings that to the United States. His sister's party begins. August 11, 1973, 9 o'clock in the afternoon, in the evening, for 25 cents, hip hop began. Kool Herc started playing the breaks of records. Now, how do I know this? Because I lived across the street. In 1973, I was 8 years old, and I lived across the street. I was there in 1600 Sedgwick Avenue in the Bronx. Kool Herc lived at 1520 Sedgwick Avenue, and I could see his building from my window. Now, he threw his party, but I couldn't get in. I was too young, and I couldn't afford it. It was 25 cents to get in. Big money in those days. Couldn't afford it. So Kool Herc started doing these parties every weekend. The first one was great. He made some money. He said, let me do this again, and again, and again. The parties got so big that he had to take them outside. That's when little guys like me got a chance to join in on this new thing that they called the jam. It was just called a jam. No flyers, nothing. It was just called a jam. Funky drummer, something. A 1, 2, 3, 4, hit it. Boom, boom. And you just look out your window, you listen, you say, that sounds like it's coming from 123 Park. Or no, that sounds like it's coming from Wingate Park. No. And then you'd have to walk around the neighborhood and find where the sound was coming from. This is the early days of hip hop. In that time, we're all dressing like Bruce Lee. Laugh if you want to. This is real. Everybody in early hip hop in the Bronx was Bruce Lee. Everybody. 1973, it's very hard. First of all, Bruce Lee was not just a kung fu martial artist to the hood, to the Bronx ghetto. He was more like a mythical hero, and the reason being is because, first of all, he knew kung fu, and that just went over well with every kid in urban areas, and he just did it like that. Bruce Lee also, if you look at his movies, there's one called Enter the Dragon, 1973. And at the beginning of Enter the Dragon, they have a golden issue series that they put out right now. But at the beginning of Enter the Dragon, there's a dialogue between Bruce Lee and a Shaolin monk, a teacher actually, a priest. And Bruce Lee's getting ready to leave the Shaolin temple. And he's asking him things like, you know, what is the greatest crime? And to not be true to yourself. And well, what is the punishment of a traitor? Death. What is the, and he goes on and on with this. They cut that out of the movie. But in the hood, we sense that this is what Bruce Lee was all about. Discipline, having the skills to break anybody down, but we loved his discipline. And this is like part of hip hop that people don't remember. Wu-Tang Clan keeps this tradition alive today. Why are they so into Shaolin? Why are they so in? Because this was the first thing we were in hip hop. This was the beginning of it. What Wu-Tang and them are doing is what Kool Herc was doing in '73. They just doing it in their way, Long Island style, you know, and so on. But I need to say that for you to understand the cultural significance of how our culture came to be. Bruce Lee and his attitude, his character, is what hip hop was trying to mimic in 1973. He had Bruce Kelly with him. young black kids in the hood, we never seen no black dude with an afro doing karate, beating up the police on the TV. We was like, wow, Bruce Lee, wow, look. And this went over well with us. We used to dress like him, talk like him, beat each other up like him. I mention this, keep this in mind, okay? This is Kool Herc's era. This is 73. This is the Vietnam War also. This is heroin everywhere, everywhere. It's heroin everywhere. Planted there by the FBI, by the way. We didn't know it then, but now we know the counterintelligence program and all of that, and J. Edgar Hoover and all of that. Now we know who put the drugs in the community, but then nobody knew. It was just everywhere. And hip hop was an escape. It was an escape. If you could break a B-boy, B-girl, if you could dance, if you could do graph, if you could MC, if you could do what Kool Herc was doing, which is basically lifting the needle up, dropping it again at the front of the break. 1, 2, 3, 4, hit it. Boom, boom, bop, boom, 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 boom. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, needle dropping. That's what he used to do back in the days. And that was the first break. That was the first, what we call cutting and scratching today. That was the first type of it. The first type of loop was a human being doing it with his hand on a turntable. His name was Kool Herc. From Kool Herc, we get Africa Bambaataa. Africa Bambaataa comes in 1974 with Zulu Nation. He started something called the organization first, then jumped into Zulu Nation. Why? He was, first of all, I'll spare you his history. You go online and see his whole history, the transformation from gang leader to cultural leader, his trip to Africa, how he got his name, what his name means. All that's online. There's tons of books on it. I'm speeding up. 1974, Africa Bambaataa comes out with Zulu Nation. And Zulu Nation, like I said before, are the ones that established hip hop as a culture, as something we was gonna live our lives by. How did this happen? Africa Bambaataa was a visionary. He saw what hip hop was back in 74. And he told all the gangs in New York, listen, the more we shooting, robbing, and stealing and killing each other, none of us are gonna be anything, none of us are gonna go anywhere. Everyone agreed. And they formed a new thing called Zulu Nation. Within Zulu Nation, which is all these gang members that just put down the rag, put down the gun, and they said, we're gonna do something positive. The whole city of New York, if you could just imagine that for a minute. Thousands of people that were part of different gangs fighting each other. This dude, Africa Bambaataa, comes up and says, we have a new plan. You could change your life by becoming an MC, a DJ, a B-boy, a graph writer, and so on, and you don't have to die in the street. All the gang members said, yes, we're doing this. At the same time, there's a guy named Lovebug Starsky, a DJ, part of Zulu Nation. He starts calling the movement hip hop. He starts putting it in his rhymes, hip hop, hip hop. He starts saying it like that. Then this is what Africa Bambaataa then took from Lovebug Starsky. He kept saying it in his rhymes and so on. And Africa Bambaataa said, that's what the name of this is called, hip hop. He started using it. What is this called? Hip hop. Breaking them, seeing graffiti or DJing. What is this called? Hip hop. Now, what's interesting about hip hop is that it matches nature identically. We keep thinking of hip hop as a music genre, and that's hip hop lowercase h, lowercase I, lowercase p, space or dash, lowercase h, lowercase o, lowercase p. That's the music genre. Anytime you're spelling hip hop, spell it with a capital H, 2 capital H's, because it's the name of a culture. Most of the magazines today, when you talk about what can we do in terms of activism with hip hop, spell it with a capital H, just something little just like that. When you become the editors of magazines or the executives of television shows where hip hop has to be spelled a certain way, always spell it with a capital H. It'll show other intellectuals and cultural studies students that you care about this as a culture. Those that don't care about hip hop as a culture and keep it as a music genre, they spell it in lowercase letters. Source Magazine, XXL, Rolling Stone Vibe, MTV, etc. All of that is hip hop in lowercase letters. Anytime you see something scholarly done on hip hop, hip hop will be capital H, lowercase I, lowercase p, space, capital H, lowercase o, lowercase p. So Africa Bambaataa turns this into a culture by adding principles. Peace, love, unity, and safely having fun. That's why we break, MC, graffiti write, DJ. This is the reason for it. Now, if you're not seeking peace, love, unity, and joy, there's no reason to be rapping, breaking, graffiti writing, DJing. There's no reason for it. This is what's going on today. I'm sorry to say, a lot of the guys that you see or hear about, or see on television, hear about on the radio, they have no reason to rap. This is what begins the laws right here. This is what begins the cultural laws. Back in the days, people used to request that you rap. You'd be that dude walking down the street and somebody says, yo, kick a rhyme. And you could be in the bread and cheese aisle of Ralph's somewhere. Yo, spit your rhyme, and it has to come out right there. That guy was always requested to rhyme. Requested to rhyme. Today, rappers are not requested to rhyme. They're forcing their rhymes on you. You're not asking them to rap for you. They're just rapping. And it's not even them, really. It's their marketing and promotions team that's really pushing the music for a profit. But this, of course, brings us away from the cultural aspects. Let me come back to them. I'm talking about the cultural mechanics of hip-hop in its early days. Let me jump from this. You get the point on this. Let me continue after Africa Bambaataa. Grandmaster Flash is what I want to come to. Because this is what I mean about hip-hop matching nature. This genius, we call him Grandmaster Flash. His name is Gordon Williams. He was first called DJ Flash. He took his name from Flash Gordon. Used to be a comic book strip, some dude fast, run around. He could run fast. His name was Flash Gordon. He was running around saving people. He took his name from that. His name was Gordon Williams, so he called himself Flash Gordon because he's the fastest DJ. But what he was doing was taking the techniques of Africa Bambaataa and Kool Herc and just modifying them, the same needle dropping, blending of music, mixing music with two different turntables and that kind of thing. But here's the genius. Gordon Williams is a certified electrician. Start, before DJ. He's a certified electrician and he can't get a job. This is more cultural. This is cultural hip hop right here. The people who invented hip hop, Africa Bambaataa, or I should say put it in order, Kool Herc, Africa Bambaataa, Grandmaster Flash. Stop there. These three people and all the people that they inspired could have done anything with their life, with their mind, with their talent. Many of us were doctors, many of us were lawyers, engineers, many of us were entrepreneurs and so on, but the racist society that we were living in at the time would not allow any African American free entrance into any mainstream institution in the United States. You don't live in this reality here today. It's still floating around, but not to the degree it was in the 70s. Sure, there were black intellectuals, black doctors, of course, but they were classed as like the exception. You know, ooh, look, a black doctor, that kind of thing. This was, you know, everybody else who wanted to study medicine or law or engineering or something like that, you were literally discouraged from it. So you look at a person like Kool Herc, he's a car mechanic. Herc has the abilities to break down a car, build cars, but he couldn't get a job like that, so he became a DJ. Africa Bambaataa is a writer, journalist. Matter of fact, the reason he was in Africa is because he won a UNICEF writing contest. Gang member, head of the biggest gang in New York, took up a writing contest and won it. I mean, these people are amazing people. Won the writing contest, went to Africa, had an epiphany, came back, and now he's Africa Bambaataa. But he's a writer that could never think about getting a job at the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and none of that. Never think about Hollywood writing. He couldn't even imagine himself there. He became a DJ and a community organizer. Grandmaster Flash, like I was saying, is a certified electrician, but can't get a job. He's a black man, but he's certified, he's dope, he's good at what he does, but no one cares about that. You're black, you ain't getting in. So he's a messenger for a department store called Crantex Fabrics. He's a messenger on a bike. Now imagine, brilliant mind, scientific mind. He's a messenger. He's delivering messages back and forth. While he's delivering the messages, he says, how can I keep a record playing from one to the other seamlessly, not like how Kool Herc do it, because there might be a break in the middle, the mix could be off a little. How do you make this record, the break, just continuously play? This is what he's thinking about while he's riding a bike as a messenger. Okay, he discovers that there are mixers that do exist, but they're not used by DJs and all that. Yeah, they're not. DJs are still using amps and knobs and stuff like that. Crossfaders are not in existence like for DJs yet. This guy takes a mic toggle switch, or often it's like a ball switch with one little thing at the top. You click it this way, it's on, click it this way, it's off. He's an electrician. He opened it up, made on left and off right, and now you click, you hear this turntable, click here, you hear this turntable. Now the battle at Disco Fever. Flash shows up with this little click, click, click thing and started cutting, scratching records. Now, Africa Bambaataa and Kool Herc were doing the same thing. To cue the record, you have to bring it back. So in their headphones, they would hear, they would hear it, but they would never let the crowd hear it. It was illegal, it was immoral, it was wrong to let the crowd hear you going, that was like the cue up. You don't let nobody hear you cue it up. Flash let everybody hear him cueing up. That was the trick. He just, instead of you not hearing, he lets you hear it. Boom. And you would be like, wow. Now imagine this. No one on the planet is doing this. I'm gonna give you a minute to meditate on that. It's difficult for this generation to actually, you don't understand, no one on earth, no one, there's this guy, he invents this thing, cutting and scratching with a mic toggle switch. He's the first. What does he do? He says, I'm gonna give this freely to all the kids in my neighborhood so they could have a skill and become somebody. Stop here. Now, to this day, Grandmaster Flash hasn't received a patent. He owns nothing. Panasonic, Sony, Toshiba, all of them have taken his idea. Every crossfader you see on a mixer is Grandmaster Flash's idea. He's never been paid for this, never, but it was him that said at the beginning, this is what hip hop needs. These little kids run 8-year-olds. If they can learn to do this, no DJ will be. This is Flash. You should bring him here, let him tell you himself. But this is what his inspiration was. Give it to the community and let them have it, and we'll all grow on that. Same thing with Africa Bambaataa. Let's organize the whole community around these principles so the young ones grow up in something strong. Same thing with Kool DJ Herc. Brought his party outside. Little guys like me get a chance to get in. Now, 1979. Hip hop splits. A group by the name of the Cold Crush Brothers. The Cold Crush Brothers. Huge, one of the first MC groups to unite in probably the first MC group. The Cold Crush Brothers. A lot of routines, all of Run DMC's routines, LL Cool J's routines, all that Cold Crush Brothers. Everybody in Sugar Hill, early days, Sugar Hill Records, Cold Crush Brothers. Treacherous 3, Cold Crush Brothers. Everybody, Funky 4+1 More, Sequence, all of that was influenced by Cold Crush Brothers. The captain of the Cold Crush Brothers is a guy named Grandmaster Caz. Caz for Casanova. They was ruling the MC scene in about 77, 78. They're ruling the scene. Flash is the newest DJ. He's now Grandmaster Flash. And he's teaching everybody how to cut, mix, and scratch. Now other DJs are coming up. Grand Mixer DST and, oh man, I could go on and on. But anyway, all these DJs start learning Flash's technique of cutting, mixing, and scratching. Now, Cold Crush, this guy, Grandmaster Casanova, there's a group called the Casanovas. He was part of it, they called him Casanova. His name was Caz. Caz had a manager called Big Bank Hank. Big Bank Hank took Caz's rhymes and said on the record Rapper's Delight, I'm the CAS and the OVA and the rest is FLY. You see, I go by the code, and this is someone else's rhymes. Big Bank Hank, if you can spell it all, it does not spell out, I'm the CAS, OVA, the rest is FLY. His name is Big Bank Hank. Why is he saying he's Casanova Fly? Because the rhymes he was using was from Casanova Fly, a guy named Grandmaster Caz who he managed. He heard him say the rhymes, took the rhymes, and made this record called Rapper's Delight. Now the other guys, Master G and Big Bank Hank, supposedly wrote their rhymes. But Master G and Wonder Mike supposedly wrote their rhymes. Big Bank Hank, part of his rhymes, a big portion of his rhyme, came from Grandmaster Caz. When the record blew up, sold 2 million records out the box, rap was on the scene at that minute. We was rapping since 1973, even before that, but the rap we do today is from 73. 79 comes, now America gets to hear rap. Rap. Guess what? America, we love you. There's a rock and a roll with a summer soul. You can rock till you're 101 years old. Rapper's Delight comes out. Here's where the culture splits. One part of the culture went corporate. That's Rapper's Delight, Sugar Hill Records. A young intern at Sugar Hill Records named Russell Simmons would leave Sugar Hill and start Def Jam. That would start corporate hip hop for the rest of our lives. Those that were true to Kool Herc, Africa Bambaataa, Grandmaster Flash stayed cultural. We got labeled underground. In that, when it split in 79, everybody started chasing the money. Money was coming in, and we was broke and poor. Like I said, 25 cents was too much. Now here comes record labels. First it was the independents. Little guys coming in trying to hustle, make a little dollar here and there. Some made some records, but nothing like Rappers. When Rapper's Delight jumped off, major independents started coming in the hood and looking around for who could rap. The first guys they came to was Cold Crush, Treacherous 3, all the Sugar Hill label. All of those groups said, Africa Bambaataa already told us that y'all were coming. We're keeping this culture to ourselves. We're gonna build our own labels, we're gonna do our own thing, y'all could go ahead. This was Africa Bambaataa telling us, we're gonna get big, and when we do, we can't sell out. First thing dudes did when they got big, sold completely out. And let me say this, and let me use this word correctly. It's not a sellout. I want you to really see the times we're living in. We're broke and starving. I mean, literally the poverty is incredible, okay? Our parents are struggling. everybody's struggling. And all you doing is rapping. Yeah, I'm this, I'm that, I'm da-da-da-da. And some dude comes along and says, listen, I got $20,000 for every verse. Every 16 bars you kick, you rhyme, I'll give you $20,000. By the end of your album, you'll get about $300,000, and you have to pay some lawyer fees and stuff, but you may walk away with about $220, something like that. And you got $20, and you got $2 in your pocket, and somebody's saying, for the thing you did for free, I'm gonna give you $250,000 for. The first hip-hoppers refused it. Said, nope, we holding on to this. This is our thing, we doing this. This when the movie Wild Style came out in '82. And they was showing you, dudes organizing, Beat Street came out, dudes organizing, Harry Belafonte was like documenting hip hop. We knew what it was. Then, actually in '81, a friend of mine, I have to say a friend because he is, but a guy by the name of Curtis Blow was the first one to sign to Mercury Records, 1981. Put out a record called These Are the Breaks. Funny how culture works. These are the breaks! And that is when hip hop broke. Curtis Blow, who is one of the biggest artists of our time on the street, when he signed to Mercury, the floodgates were open. He signed to Mercury, and these are the break. And the record blew up, so everybody, Mercury was signing people, then other little labels came along, and they wouldn't come to Africa Bambaataa, they wouldn't come to Kool Herc, they wouldn't come to Flash, and Melly Mel. I didn't even get into Melly Mel. Keith Cowboy from the Furious Five, where you get Say Ho, that comes from Keith Cowboy, like a dude made that up. I didn't even get into them. All of them refused to sign with the mainstream. Curtis Blow signed. When he signed, a lot of other dudes said, well, we have to sign now because he's gonna represent all of hip hop to all of America. So other dudes started signing with their own take on hip hop. We gonna keep it real for Kool Herc. We gonna keep it real with this cash. Oh, we gonna get these girls. Oh, I'm gonna buy this big house. Everybody had their vision of what hip hop was supposed to be because the mainstream came in and started giving power to worthless people. The community had people in it that, and I say there's no such thing as a worthless person, but understand what I'm saying here. Some of us actually had the talent and others of us did not. The record companies came in and paid the ones that didn't have the talent because the ones that did would not give it to them. So they paid the ones that didn't have the talent but was willing to mimic and imitate the originals. This is why, with all due respect, Jam Master Jay, you know I love you, Run DMC, they got everything from Cold Crush. They'll tell you, that's why I'm saying it here with respect. They watched the Cold Crush, but Russell signed them, not the Cold Crush. So they doing these routines, and there's real dudes in the hood that's making these routines up and got hood credibility. But the mainstream don't care about them. They just want anybody who will mimic them for commercial means, like no culture on it, no principles on it, nothing, just come on and make this money. We're all broken, we're starving, so mad people went in to get the money. It worked. Hip hop became rich. And I mean rich, not wealthy. Wealthy has more to do with well-being, health, which includes money and resources. I'm just talking about money and resources. No health, no principles, nothing. It's about 1983, Run DMC is now out, huge rap group. Bigger than anybody today. Jay-Z, again, with much respect to him, he's nowhere near what Run DMC was. Nowhere near it. He got his lane, he's doing his thing, no doubt. Lil Wayne, all of them, they all got their lane. But if you can imagine a time when rap music did not exist in the world, and the first dudes to step up and spit they rhyme. And for the first time, America's hearing it, Germany's hearing it, Africa's hearing it. In fact, the only reason hip hop is in the world is because of Africa Bambaataa. He was the first guy in '82 to tour the world. Thank God for that. Zulu Nation toured the world in '82. They put a record out called Planet Rock. And Planet Rock took them around the globe, and everywhere they went, they set up chapters. And to this day, there's Zulu Nation chapters all over the world teaching real hip hop. This is how the culture stayed intact. Because Bam went around teaching it, telling the Chinese, telling the Japanese, telling the Koreans, telling the Nigerians, Zulus, South Africans, Australians, all of that. He's telling everybody, this is hip hop, breaking, MCing, graffiti, or DJing. And why do we do it? For peace, love, unity, and safely having fun. Now let's get the battle started. And dudes would just come out and give their soul. Now that soul got captured on a contract. And when you are selling your art, you're selling your soul. Let's make no mistake about it. Artists have to sell their art to live and eat. So be very careful where you sell portions of your soul. Be careful. The soul is infinite. The soul is infinite. You have a lot of soul to give. But the soul has rules. And the rule of the soul is, whatever the soul touches, touches it. So whatever you sell your soul to, make sure you want to touch it. Make sure you want that as part of your life. Life, not your month, your week, your day, your life. Many of us looked at it this way from the early days. Early days. We stay, or my breed of hip hopper is from Kool Herc, Africa Bambaataa, Grandmaster Flash. This is the line that I come from. When I came out with my first record, I followed the rules. Cultural rules. What's the cultural rules? Whenever you come out with your first rhyme, you shout the ancestors. But you don't even speak before you shout the ancestors. We used to have a thing back in the days, I don't know if y'all familiar with Old English 800, but it's a malt liquor trick. We used to take the Old English 800, pour it out, before you even put it to your mouth, before you put the Heineken, before anything. Pour it out for my dudes that ain't here. This is what the record companies took away. Dudes is always talking about, yo, we got the Cristal, we got the this and that, the Patron and this and that. They never talk about pouring none out for their dudes. They drinking it all for themselves. Never once do you say, yeah, I got the Patron, but this goes out for my dude right here, now let me start. These were cultural rules that we had that protected you from corporate life. Africa Bambaataa then, I'm speeding up, 1987. Africa Bambaataa has a meeting at Latin Quarters. He brought all the top rappers together. By this time, we all had now put out records. We're battling now. It's all a battle now, because now corporate hip hop or corporate rap is trying to take over the image of cultural hip hop. This is back in like 84, 85. It's getting real comical. Hip hop is getting real comical. And the streets is like, where's us? Where we at? And our representation looks real comical. Africa Bambaataa had a meeting in 87, and he said, we need to organize and unionize hip hop. We need to come together and make ourselves a global culture. 1987, he said that. I took his cue from there. And it was, actually I remember talking to Heavy D, rest in peace. Heavy D was at the meeting as well. And he came through and I was like, yo, here's what we need to do. Stop the violence movement. 1985, Ronald Reagan and Oliver North brought crack cocaine into Los Angeles to pay for their war in South America. And that crack epidemic came to New York in 85. It got hit here in 83, 82. Came to us in 85. Crack epidemic was ridiculous. I ain't gotta tell y'all. New York came, artists like myself started to make records against the crack scene. But the crack scene, the suppliers of crack cocaine were also the record companies themselves. We didn't know that MCA was part of Seagram's and Gin. Got caught up in money laundering scandals and all of that type of stuff. We didn't know that. We didn't know RCA made warheads. You know, we're rapping for RCA and they're taking our money and making warheads to bomb Iraq or whoever. We didn't know. We just jumped in. Why? Because we're fighting each other. Why? Because we divided ourselves. Why? Because we were desperate and broke. Why? Because we had no parents. Why? Because they had no parents. Why? Because we were terrorized. Why? Because we were rich. Only rich people can be turned poor. Always remember that. Only rich people can be turned poor. Why? No human being on the earth is poor. Why are there groups of poverty, people in poverty? Why? This is a design. And a lot of us play games with it. A lot of intellectuals play games with it. Street dudes don't play games with this. But a lot of intellectuals play games where we write books, we do this and. But at the end of the day, the problem still remains. What's the problem? White racism. That's the problem. Even white people are affected. Big up to all the abolitionists that fought for my freedom, the early part of this country. White people helping Harriet Tubman on the Underground Railroad. Run that word again, underground. What was above ground? Free blacks? What was it? Underground Railroad. Underground because you wasn't supposed to see it. It was secret. We get this image of Harriet Tubman in the dark with the lantern. No, it was white families all along the trail. Blacks didn't own those homes. We were slaves running. Of course, it was some free blacks. Of course, they were part of the abolitionist movement. Many free blacks and freed blacks were part of that. But they're fighting for their own freedom. We're fighting for our own freedom. What does it mean for another race of people to fight for your freedom? That's real black history. We could talk all day about our own history. Sure, we should know it by now. But what about the white folk that gave up their lives, was lynched right along with the black people for black freedom? What about that? See, this is also part of the hip hop discussion, because when you start to talk about revolution, changing society, well, racism is not going anywhere until we get rid of race. As long as we keep seeing ourselves as racist, then there will be racism. This is where hip hop comes in, and a lot of people, I mean, I get real controversial. I don't even know why, but it's called controversial because I suggested hip hop is a global culture. And we are. I don't know why anybody can't see that, but we are a global culture, and we're moving into the realm of spirituality as well. Something I'd like to leave you with here today. I discussed the history of hip hop up to the point of, say, I came out in 86. It'll stop right in 85. With the crack cocaine scene and those who represent culture and those who represent corporate. Those that represented corporate didn't care. They rhymed about crack, they sold crack, they was part of it, they was part of the destruction of the community itself. But I will say in their defense, the people they destroyed were already destroying themselves. Those who had sense in their head would walk past the crack dealer like, you stupid. And the crack dealer would respect that. Any kid in the hood with a father, dealers would respect that. Any kid in the hood whose moms was somebody in the neighborhood, dealers would respect that. Nobody was just running around, just selling crack to babies. No, that never happened. What happened was it was a systematic ethnic cleansing of the African American and Latino community. Systematic ethnic cleansing in the United States. Those that were smart stayed away from it. That's it. Others, let me try that, man. There you go. Now, I stop here because now we'll jump to the metaphysical part of this. And this is where you got to really expand your mind, taking everything I just said culturally. No jobs. We're brilliant in terms of academics. We think we're intellectuals, critical thinkers at that. But no one cares in the society. So much for education, so much for intellect, so much for awareness. And you should think about this. It doesn't matter how much you know. If the environment in which you live is trying to reject you, that's the issue. This is the issue. And this is what happened. Mainstream rejected us. Because our parents, some of our parents, were trained by the mainstream, they rejected us too. Sad to say, not everybody. MC Lyte has brilliant parents. Queen Latifah has brilliant parents. Their mothers, Lauryn Hill, mom's always with her. But the majority. When hip hop was coming up, don't touch my turntable, you're gonna scratch my record. Turn that noise off. Some of the greatest MCs rhyming in their bathroom, their father kicking the door. Did you do your homework? Homework? I'm spitting the next ticket out the ghetto. And you telling me about homework. This is what we were up against in these days. I bring this because now the metaphysical. Or should I say, well, metaphysica. Beyond the physics. Beyond the physics, beyond physical. That's what it is today. In Aristotle's time, it was beyond the physics. He had 13 books on natural science. And because this last book had no title, they named it the after physics. Ta metaphysica. Metaphysics, the after physics, after Aristotle's 13 books on natural science, physics. What metaphysics has now become is a science that includes a whole host of mind sciences. And I mentioned that just to put a disclaimer at the top. The type of metaphysics I study would be called medunetia. It is not Western metaphysics. It is not even, medunetia comes from the Egyptians. It's actually an Egyptian system of spirituality that deals with words, deals with divine speech. And the reason I even look at that and say, well, it's not even that, is because my perspective is hip hop. And what I've realized